I guess the last maybe 15 years or so, more than that, ever since I started working, I've been writing in the children's space. Right from the time when we conceptualized Bonita Quiz Contest, which went from radio to television. That was something we did. I used to write as to edit a children's newspaper for Sunday Observer. That was when my kids were little. And then somewhere along the way with my husband, who's also who's basically from advertising, but then we married our skills together, and we started a company called Quadrum, which is actually in the space of creating content for children, for educational books largely. So we had, at one point of time, we had about 200 teachers we were working with. We were writing, creating content for educational books, for publishers, for educational publishers like Cambridge and Oxford and Madhuban and all these guys. So during that whole process, I just guess I got more and more into understanding children's writing. Along the way, I had my own two kids who grew up, got married, and then my daughter has got two kids. So fortunately, I've been in the children's space for the longest time. And we have through the process of building Quadrum, we also built a very strong team of editors, writers, designers, who all were focused on children's content. So that kind of, I think, got me firmly into this space of children's writing. And then about 3 years ago, I started my hands-on vertical journey, because up until then, I was writing for children, but as a part of Quadrum, as a service provider. Then I started writing under my own name. And that's when all these series took off, Discover India, my favorite one, and a whole lot more for children, in the various spaces of children's writing. So, yeah. Actually, honestly, it didn't take away at all. In fact, it made me more productive than ever, because suddenly there was no need to look after any logistical, administrative, any of those problems. So I was completely focused on just writing. But yeah, I mean, to the extent that writing is, like you said, it's a very one-to-one kind of a thing. You are writing with yourself. So going out, interacting with people, it is a little bit, it gives you a lot of input, of course. So to that extent, but then having said that, I didn't personally find the pandemic in any way restricting when it came to the writing part of it. In fact, I became far more productive. I discovered new hobbies. I began to doodle. So I found that I can doodle now. I'm doing books that I'm doodling for. So in one way, to look at it positively, it's been good. Absolutely. My grandkids are my granddaughter yet, because my grandson is still too little. But she is not only my critic, she's my sounding board, she's my guinea pig, whatever. In fact, some of the books I've actually started because, while giving her lunch or dinner, I made up a story. And then I said, oh, this might work as a story as well in a book. So, because you have to be incredibly creative when you're dealing with children, as I'm sure you know, because they sort of keep getting you to push the bar in terms of your imagination, and you have to keep pace with them at times. But so I actually, even at Quadrum before the lockdown, the other thing that I co-founded along with my daughter and my husband is this product called Pod Squad, which is a children's activity box with educational tools in it, things like flashcards and felt mats and boards and manipulatives and all. So as we developed those, also we used to test them out with children. This is, I'm saying, pre-lockdown also. So we would get kids collect them together, give it to them, let them play, and just simply observe them. So that is something that we've always been doing, getting feedback from children, even if they're not my own. But during the lockdown, I have definitely been getting very interesting feedback, because sometimes the way we see it as an adult, they suddenly see something completely different, and then you have to revisit the story. I'll give you a very recent example. There was this a picture book, and me and my team and all of us were very pleased with it. And then I read it out to my granddaughter, And then she said, the protagonist, she said, who is he in this whole thing? So we
Oh,
suddenly realized that the visual that we were taking for granted, that everybody will recognize him, she didn't recognize as the protagonist. So then, we went back to the drawing board and we modified it a little bit. So, of course, you have to balance it out because it's also subjective. But definitely, I think getting feedback from children is, I found extremely useful. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So I don't know whether it was the fact that we'd been creating educational books for so long, but and also my own experiences in school, I guess, and in helping my children through their school years. So I feel that children really, and I'm sure you feel this as a mother, as an educator, or as any which way, that children like best to interact and to have something to do. So activities, I feel, are really important. And that's why in most of the books that I've done, I make sure that we have a section at the back or interspersed through the book, where everything that they are reading and taking away, they have a place to sort of do a little drawing or do a little puzzle or a quiz or something, because that keeps them, excuse me, that keeps them challenged. So that is something that I feel is important. So now, but when you come to where the book itself, its primary objective is education. So sometimes the book, the primary objective may not be education, it may be fun in which you sort of pepper it with education. But when it is education, for example, the skill builder grammar series that we've done with Puffin, now this I have not written, I have curated it, teachers have written it, but I have helped to put it together with the team. So what we've tried to do, this is across 4 levels. So there's level 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're saying, how do you bring the fun element? I'll just show you an example. So for example, when you do a grammar book, we've tried to bring crosswords into it. So it's
okay.
not only about match the following and fill in the blanks, which they do in any case in their or I actually pulled these out. So like we've done a jigsaw, so it's a jigsaw puzzle that they have to solve, but along the way they are learning grammar, they're learning whatever that particular topic might be. So I just feel that there are so many techniques that we have which we can use in books, which is what we try to do. So while the learning, the takeaway is educational, hardcore, it differs from textbooks in that there is no, everything is learned by doing. There are no grand definitions, there's no information. It's not a textbook. It's, you could call it a practice book, but mainly we called it a skill builder because it's actually in a very focused way we're trying to build their skills. Yeah, this is, I would say, very different in that it has the same concepts, but uh, as I said earlier, it is through practice and through doing. The other thing that we've done is that we are calling it skill builder because as you would know, the education board is also focusing a lot on 21st century skills, which are apart from your reading, writing, math, and all, which are skills, which are academic skills. Here, the skills are like communication, decision making, analytical thinking, problem solution, conflict resolution, teamwork, etc. So, what we've tried to do is that the main grammar skills, which are the correct grammar while speaking, while reading, while writing, or having a greater, better vocabulary, using the right punctuation, those are the grammar concepts. But what we've tried to do is we've actually brought in other skills like problem solving, like analytical thinking. And what we've done is in the beginning of the book, there's a skill chart. Okay. And we've got all the skills listed here. And every single activity that they do, you can map it to which skill they've taken away. So, for example, the skills are, there's reading, writing, speaking, of course, punctuation, there's creative thinking, there's decision making, there's problem solving, and critical thinking. So, these we strongly feel that these are skills which are parallel skills, and in fact, as life is changing, as we can see the way it is, the pure academic skills don't amount to as much if you don't have these other skills. These are life skills. So we are trying to integrate them not in a dramatic way, but through this. So, and the parent can actually track to see which skill is being picked up through which activity. So that makes it completely different from a grammar book, which is a grammar textbook, or as you said, Ren and Martin, or any of those, which is more about definitions. You know, you learn the definition, then you uh, do a little bit of practice, and then it follows a format. So this is not like that. We've kind of built on those foundations of grammar, but done it differently. This is a question that comes up very often in various workshops and talks, and informally also. Like, a lot of parents have this anxiety that my children don't read, they don't read enough. So, one of the things that in fact, we had this one very interesting talk with librarians last year, year before last, where the librarians from various schools were also, we were having a conversation with them about how to make the library more accessible and more interesting, so that children go to the library and use it more. So I feel that one of the things that you can't do with children, as I said earlier, is to sort of tell
Yeah,
them this is reading hours, so read. But what I have found useful in with my kids, as well as with parents that I've seen, where I've seen children read a lot, is thing number one: surround yourself with books. So what happens is that when there are books around, it's natural that children will pick them up. The second thing I find very useful is if parents also read the same book that their child does. So what happens is that there's a point of discussion, there's a point of reference. So I do that with my children first, and now with my grandchildren. I'm familiar with the stories that they're reading, because I've made it a point, either I read it with them, or if I don't have the time to do that, I definitely make sure that I pick it up and I read the book, so I know what they're talking about. So that also helps me integrate it into their daily life. So for example, I mean, if they've just read Gruffalo, and we talk about something, I'm trying to make up a story, or we're talking about somebody who's scared, so I can say, like how Gruffalo did. So she connects with me then, you know and I feel that that kind of a thing, it sort of feeds on each other, because then the more you talk about it, the more involved you are, the more they want to share, the more they'll read. So it's not a and nor is it a one size fits all kind of a solution, I feel, because I agree that there are some children who'd much rather be outdoors and playing. There are some children who'd love to. So it's not like only books is good. You need to balance it out. But I think surrounding yourself with books. The other thing that I found very nice and useful is the habit of reading before they go to sleep at night, because it's also a calm time. You can start them off young. So even if it's just one story which takes 10 minutes, uh, it sort of begins that they begin to look forward to that bonding time also. So I think a night story, a bedtime, which is why probably the concept of bedtime tales is such an time tested concept. So yeah, there are lots of things that you can keep doing. So, again, I don't know if there's any single tool as such. Every parent has to figure out their own what works best for them and their child. But a few things that I find are useful is that writing, not for the sake of writing, but to write a story, for example. So at first, you have to challenge them and intrigue them enough to want to make up a story. So again, a technique that I use is that I uh, say one line and then ask my granddaughter to say the other line. So we build a story together. So what happens? I'll say, so one day there was a eagle and it flew high up and it sat on a pole. And I say, now it's your turn. So then she'll say, then her answer might be very simple, but it still takes the story forward. So she'll say, then it sat there and it got lost. So there's no logic to it, perhaps. I don't know. So then she says, now it's your turn. So I say, okay, so it got lost and it started howling and our pigeons heard it. So the pigeon came there. So, so it challenges her. So it builds her imagination. So there's a story in her mind. So that is, I feel, the first level of wanting them to write, because it's a The other thing that I find very nice and useful is picture talk, where you show them a picture and ask them to just write words that they might. So, what happens is that they should start enjoying the process of putting things down, of A, first visualizing them, making them, stringing it into a story, and then B, being able to put it down. So, again, these are small techniques, like uh, using picture talk or playing a puzzle, like playing a game, just like you have a story, a game where you make up a story together. You can write down words together. So let's write five fruit for a slightly older child who can write, and let's see who finishes faster. So you start writing quickly. So you need to turn it into a game, which is where many of the books that I do have this concept of a little bit of interactivity and fun. So these are all techniques and tools which you can, some of them are homegrown and you just make them up, and I'm sure there are lots which are used by teachers and schools. It's a sometimes writing, I feel, for a particular age group is quite tricky, because as we said, that age groups can vary. So when I write, I try to keep a median age group in mind, okay? Because there will be some stories which the child is reading by herself or himself, or some books. And then those same books another child might enjoy if read out to. So, you can't, as a writer, be 100% sure that this book will be read or consumed in this way. Sometimes a child will read it, some children will want it to be read to them. So I what I try and do, I mean, so there are the stories, there are some, like Discover India is information, although
Yeah.
they're done in a fun way, but the primary focus is information, fun facts and information about India. Then there is another series which is called Dealing with Feelings, in which is for a younger age group, which is talking about dealing with anger, dealing with jealousy. Now that is done entirely through stories about little animals. So there's a little animal. There's Zizi the zebra who's always sad, or there's the giraffe who's jealous. There's a and so forth. There's a porcupine who's always shy. So how do they overcome these emotions? So when I did this, and I was delighted to find that it actually happened, is that I found mothers saying that, "Are you going to be Oof the sulky snail today? Are you going to be a sulky snail like Oof? Okay, are you being an angry goat like, I forget the name?" So they actually started bringing those characters into their conversations, and telling the child that, "Don't be sulky like Oof, okay, today." Or the child will say, "Today I'm going to be like Oof." So I feel that when parents, I always have a little note to parents in the beginning of most of my books, which in which I try to uh, communicate their role in uh, sharing this book with the child. Uh, Obviously, all parents may not do it in the same way. Some will be far more interactive. I mean, Discover India, I know that I've had letters and feedback from parents who've said that, we've taken the book with us when we went to that place. And we decided that we're going to carry that book every time we go, because then, the child interacts with the places that he's seen, or so forth. So that's like, I had not thought that children would do that or parents would do that. So I was absolutely delighted when that happened. But this Dealing with Feelings is another example. So it's like in Skill Builder, I just hope that they are able to. This series actually has got grammar, it's got science. We've done Skill Builder science as well, and math, etc., phonics. So it's a big series, and I just hope that parents are able to uh, interact with children and do it, which is something that I cue to them as much as I can. you know, I actually, well, yes, the primary focus is children's books, because it's the space that I've been in, and it's the space that I love, and I'm enjoying it. And it's deceptively easy, also. I admit that, because so many books have come out, although they've taken a few years to come out, but they came out in a pace for which I've got to say a big thank you to Puffin always for, being there and giving it the voice. But I've got, I don't know, at least 5 ideas going on, 5 books happening at the same time. One of them is not a children's book, so it's a new genre for me, and I'm taking my time over it. Let's see, it's on the back burner right now. But I've got some picture books coming out. I've got some books on STEM coming out. So exciting. Yes, the lockdown has slowed down things to that extent because everybody's treading the water and waiting to see how schools will open, which doesn't seem imminent right now. So I guess there is that. But uh, the fact that books will always be needed, children will always enjoy books, is very encouraging and nice. So yeah.